Before the sun lifts over Tertius Hive, the queue is already moving. Shackled figures shiver under a drizzle of oil rain, while servo skulls drift along the lines like mechanical carrion birds, their red auger lenses stuttering, ink needles printing tags onto damp paper flesh. 9 counts, a pause, rise. 9 counts, a pause, kneel. The litany of burden is spoken without thought, a metronome that steadies breath and keeps the column from breaking. The catechism sounds like prayer. It functions like a clock. They come from everywhere the Imperium files names. A debtor with a chalked tally on his back, interest grown carnivorous. A hive scrapper whose permits lapsed during a quota audit. A farmhand from the ash belt who chose the wrong patron saint. Criminals by sentence, by accident, by census. The Arbites call it penal levy. Administratum ledgers call it flesh tithe. Commissariat pamphlets call it redemption through service, a phrase that weighs less than the chains it justifies. The yard is part cathedral, part abattoir. Vox casters crackle through prescribed verses, while auger masts read heart rhythms and skin temperatures. Expenditure ratios hang on a board beside the shrine. Bodies forecast against munitions allotments and transit capacity. The numbers change as the day warms. They always trend upward. Clerks work in lacquered masks to protect them from the smell of fear. Each body is measured, questioned, annotated. Reclamation protocols apply in full, one form repeats, stamped in a red that looks brown in the rain. No one explains reclamation to the queue. They are told to keep eyes front, to time the breath to the 9 count, to surrender possessions that do not fit the issued profile of a soldier-to-be. Possessions become contraband, contraband converts to fines, fines convert to service length. The math is simple. The math is sovereign. A medici servitor approaches the first column, its multiple arms extending scanner arrays and injection ports. Processing begins immediately upon arrival. No delays, no appeals. A woman with mining scars traces the holes in her palm before the servitor seals them with paste. A boy who has never seen open sky asks if he will. The priest answers with the refrain and the click of a counter. The thesis is visible from the gantries as clearly as the queue. The Imperium fights its wars by turning citizens into inventory, not in moments of panic, but as routine, not as a shame, but as policy. This is a supply chain that operates with mechanical precision across 1,000 worlds. When the gates open, the column answers the litany and steps inside the processing halls. The prayer will keep cadence. The paperwork will keep score. What delivers them here? The statutes, the metrics, and the quiet bargains made in offices above the rain, waits just beyond the threshold. The gates seal shut, but the machinery that delivered these bodies to the threshold operates far above the wet concrete and oil, rain. In climate-controlled offices where suffering becomes statistics, functionaries transform hunger, desperation, and human error into units of military supply. This is not emergency conscription born of crisis. This is systematic harvest, as routine as tithe collection, and as inevitable as entropy. Penal conscription provides the steadiest stream. Arbites precincts receive levy quotas tied directly to demographic requirements transmitted from the munitorum. Each month brings fresh directives specifying needs: young males for assault units, technical specialists for support roles, expendable masses for attrition warfare. Precinct commanders adjust enforcement patterns accordingly. Traffic violations become sedition charges when infantry quotas run low. Unlicensed commerce transforms into treason when the war machine needs bodies. Justice becomes inventory management, wrapped in legal sanctity. The debt bondage apparatus operates with equal mechanical precision. Imperial citizens who cannot meet tithe obligations face interest rates calculated to ensure default. A factory worker whose output falls short finds his family's food allocation reduced until military service becomes the only path to survival. Families surrender members as collateral against impossible sums. The administratum calls these volunteer programs, but volunteers require choice, and the system provides none. Debt converts to flesh with mathematical certainty. When subtlety proves insufficient, crisis conscription activates through Emergency Powers Decree 12 Tertius, which defines any period without active recruitment as requiring immediate correction. The decree has remained in continuous effect for 3 centuries. Press gangs sweep underhive settlements during security operations, collecting bodies like tax collectors gathering coin. Transit hubs prove efficient hunting grounds. Workers between shifts, travel papers uncertain, no one to report them missing before the transport lifts. Processing centers receive human cargo through requisition forms that sanitize brutality into bureaucratic language. Human resource allocation describes family separation. Penal redemption opportunities describes forced military service with survival rates measured in percentages. Civic service obligations describes slavery with a uniform and a prayer. The language transforms victims into assets, suffering into supply chains. Munitorum Directive 7. Alpha mandates sustainable expenditure rates, ensuring continuous supply without depleting source populations below replacement levels. Planetary governors study demographic charts like farmers examining soil reports, calculating maximum harvest without killing the field. Each world maintains breeding quotas alongside conscription quotas. Citizens exist to produce more citizens who exist to feed the war machine. The classification protocol begins before processing, sorting human material by anticipated use. Green marks appear on ledgers for standard infantry, yellow for technical aptitudes, red for assault expendables, black for assignments carrying no return authorization. Colors are promises the system makes to itself. The people wearing them learn the cost later. Transit follows mathematics. Waybills list human resource allocation, unprocessed, counted by mass and oxygen consumption. The queue that entered these gates represents one consignment among thousands, fed by this lattice of incentives and punishments operating across 10,000 worlds. Inside, systematic brutalization waits to transform predictions into functioning parts. The human cargo that acquisition machinery delivered to these gates now feeds into processing facility Crig Secundus, where systematic transformation operates on industrial schedules. A condensation-streaked board chalks the timeline. Intake 0300 to 0900. Medical evaluation 0910 to 1530. Classification 1535 to 1740. Assignment 1745 to 2300, 96 hours, measured in 9-count intervals. The litany learned in the queue now regulates movement through each station. Medical evaluation strips away the last pretense of individuality. Bodies are measured like components: bone density, lung capacity, pain thresholds, reflexes. Servitors work with mechanical precision. drawing blood into numbered vials while scanners catalogue genetic markers and chemical baselines. Hair falls into reclamation sacs, keratin for filter media, follicles for biochemical analysis. Names disappear beneath tin throat tags, bearing numbers, colors, and grid coordinates in the machine. The classification protocol transforms predictions into assignments. Green tags mark standard infantry, adequate health, minimal technical skills, projected survival measured in months rather than years. A trembling boy from the Ash Belt becomes Green 2-31187 after scanners detect manageable anxiety levels. Yellow classifications receive technical roles. A woman with mining experience earns assignment to vehicle maintenance despite ash lung scarring her respiratory readings. Red subjects show aggression markers or physical resilience suited for expendable assault roles. A broad-shouldered debtor whose arrest record includes violence becomes Red 470923, tagged for frontal attack units. The Reclamation Directive asserts itself through subdermal identification chips pressed beneath each clavicle with surgical precision. Every chip links to biometric readers throughout the facility, pinging location data every 9 seconds, while monitoring pulse, temperature, and stress indicators. The same systems that track living subjects will catalogue their remains when processing concludes. Data flows into cogitators that add each entry to galactic databases, ensuring no Imperial resource, living or dead, disappears without accounting. Psychological conditioning operates through controlled degradation. Sonic emitters broadcast loyalty catechisms, while screens flicker with images of Imperial glory and Xenos threats. Sleep comes in measured intervals, never deep enough for true rest. Questions are asked in rhythms that discourage thought. Do you renounce your name? Do you accept correction? Each hesitation earns notation in psychological profiles that will determine final deployment. Processing wastage appears on daily reports as routine operational cost. Heat exhaustion, cardiac arrest, psychological breakdown, all anticipated like weather patterns. Facility logs show acceptable attrition rates, 3.8% for standard processing, 6.2% for assault conditioning, 12.4% for specialized protocols. Bodies that cannot survive transformation are wrapped in fiber shrouds with barcodes set aside for material reclamation. The system orders extra subjects to compensate for expected failures. Equipment assignment follows classification codes with mechanical precision. Greens receive basic kit, flak armor, lasgun, rations calculated for projected deployment duration. Yellows get technical tools and extended training. Reds receive close assault weapons and mobility-focused protection. Then the blacks are separated. Silent guards escort them through corridors marked with Mechanicus authorization seals toward chambers where specialized conditioning awaits purposes the ledgers do not specify. Beyond the classification chambers, conditioning operates with the mechanical precision of industrial machinery calibrated for human material. The 9-count rhythm that regulated the queue now governs every aspect of transformation. Sleep arrives in calculated fragments, 4 hours, then 2, then 90 minutes, keeping minds exhausted but functional. Bodies learn to operate on systematic deprivation, while personalities dissolve into component parts. Green classifications endure standard military conditioning, designed to replace individual thought with unit response. They rise at the siren, kneel at the click, strip lasguns by touch while priests recite the oath of muzzle discipline. Meals are grey-paced, rationed to temper rather than strength, dispensed on schedules that foster constant low-level anxiety. Pain becomes education. Hesitation earns collective punishment. A trembling hand condemns the platoon to run until vomit slicks the grating. The ash-belt boy who asked about Sky now answers the name question correctly. He has none. Survival begins as collaboration against the machine's schedule. Yellow subjects receive technical conditioning that preserves cognitive function while surrendering autonomy. Under isolator hoods, they solve wiring puzzles, while white noise and incense keep thoughts within sanctioned lanes. Tool catechisms pair with schematic drills. Torque values are sung like psalms. Errors deliver cold bites from shock wands. Accuracy earns longer breaths. Their specialized skills require surgical application of fear, enough to ensure compliance, not enough to damage technical capacity. Red classifications undergo systematic brutalization designed to transform terror into weapon-grade desperation. Starvation becomes tactical training. Pain becomes familiar territory. They learn to charge into certain death, not from courage, but because hesitation brings worse consequences. Protein is withheld before assault days to spice blood with hunger. Survival rates during red conditioning drop to 73.4%, but survivors emerge as human projectiles capable of functioning under conditions that would paralyze rational thought. Then the blacks disappear into chambers where Mechanicus adepts observe through reinforced glass. The Omega protocols remain classified beyond standard documentation, but screams echo through ventilation during night cycles. Sensory deprivation alternates with overload until reflex collapses into conditioned response. Command syllables pair with shocks, then relief, then nothing, until muscle fires at words alone. Small surgeries follow, neural pathway modifications performed with prayers to the Omnissiah that rhyme with cut and suture. Breakage is expected. Slate boards display acceptable attrition rates, 8.2% for standard processing, 12.4% for specialized protocols. Subjects who fracture completely under pressure are removed to medical facilities where their failure becomes data for protocol refinement. The system learns from every broken mind, optimizing techniques for the next batch. By the fourth night, the metronome rules them completely. What began as human material now responds to calculated stimuli with mechanical precision. The mechanical precision that transforms human material into military assets operates according to calculations that reduce life to ledger entries. By the fourth night, when conditioning has stripped away individual will, the mathematics can finally treat them as predictable units. Training costs determine doctrine long before any officer pretends strategy guides his choices. In Munitorum archives, requisition forms quantify the brutal arithmetic with bureaucratic precision. Training one guard veteran costs 847 throne gelt and requires 18 months. Processing one expendable soldier costs 23 throne gelt and requires 96 hours. The calculus writes itself when death rates exceed replacement capacity. Quantity defeats quality through simple mathematics, advanced equipment, extensive training, and veteran leadership strain, supply lines across galactic distances. Expendable units need basic weapons, minimal conditioning, and replacement schedules that account for total loss within operational windows, measured in weeks. Acceptable loss ratios appear on tactical boards like weather forecasts. Assault operations budget 67% casualties among expendable units, while projecting 12% losses for regular formations. The mathematics favor overwhelming numbers over individual capability. 10,000 processed soldiers cost less than 1,000 trained guardsmen, yet deliver superior tactical results when deployed against prepared positions. Military logistics treat them like ammunition, consumable resources stockpiled for systematic expenditure. The reclamation value assessments reveal the system's ultimate cynicism. Form 77 Omega catalogues post-mortem utility with surgical precision. Flak armor recycled into new plates, weapons redistributed to replacement units, biomass rendered for protein synthesis, bone meal processed for agricultural supplements. Even the subdermal identification chips yield location data for efficient corpse collection. The machine consumes everything, wastes nothing. Graves become resource extraction sites. Performance metrics incentivize high casualty rates through replacement quotas tied to operational success. Commanders who achieve objectives with efficient expenditure of human material receive commendations for tactical boldness. Those who attempt conservation face inquiries about resource utilization efficiency. The system rewards death and punishes survival, creating institutional pressure that ensures maximum consumption of expendable assets. Casualty projections operate like production schedules. Strategic planners calculate required death tolls before operations begin, ordering replacement batches to arrive as current units reach projected elimination dates. The timing synchronizes supply with demand, ensuring continuous availability. Mathematics transforms mass murder into logistics management. Financial audits demonstrate the brutal hierarchy. Maintaining one Space Marine chapter costs equivalent resources to process 2.3 million expendable soldiers. Elite formations receive protection because replacement proves expensive. Expendable units receive deployment because replacement costs nothing. The economics dictate tactics. For the processed subject who began this journey in a penitent's queue, survival becomes not just unlikely, but economically inefficient. Yet numbers alone cannot compel flesh to march into certain death. To ensure compliance when mathematics meet reality, the Imperium applies instruments of control, calibrated as precisely as any weapon. The mathematics that reduce human life to expendable units cannot compel flesh to march into machine guns through calculation alone. When survival becomes economically inefficient and death serves tactical purpose, the system requires enforcement mechanisms calibrated with the same precision that governed processing. The instruments of control operate through calculated terror, transforming desperation into compliance through systematic application of fear. Disciplinary collars encircle every throat like metal prayers, their ceramite surfaces etched with purity seals and microcircuitry. The explosive charges represent only the most visible function, monofilament detonators that end debate with surgical decapitation. But the collars serve purposes beyond execution. Biometric sensors monitor pulse, temperature, stress, hormones, and neural activity while transmitting data streams to command cogitators every 9 seconds, the same cadence that governed the litany learned in processing queues. The prayer was always a diagnostic protocol. Location beacons track movement to within 3 meters, while audio pickups record conversations, prayers, and whispered rebellions. Geofencing systems define advance lines and retreat boundaries. Cross them, and the collar warns with cold vibration. Persist, and graduated correction escalates from shock to severance through protocols titled with bureaucratic modesty. The commissariat operates through calculated terror, wrapped in religious authority. Political officers receive training in applied psychology, learning to calibrate fear with surgical precision. Summary executions follow mathematical patterns, frequent enough to maintain terror, selective enough to preserve unit strength. A trembling hand earns death. Efficient killing earns temporary reprieve. The system teaches that survival depends on tactical utility rather than moral worth. Collective punishment eliminates individual defiance by making units self-policing. When one soldier hesitates, the platoon endures extended conditioning. When one questions orders, rations decrease for all. Decimation protocols select every 10th by lot when units break. The machine turns desperate people against each other, ensuring peer pressure reinforces official control. Solidarity becomes treason. Compassion becomes tactical weakness. Reclassification threats provide escalating deterrence. Green subjects who show reluctance face reassignment to red classifications, where survival rates plummet. Reds who question orders become blacks, disappearing into specialized conditioning chambers. The fluid category system ensures each classification fears demotion to something worse. Artificial hope proves more effective than despair at motivating compliance. Redemption tallies promise that exceptional service might earn sentence reduction, that families might escape retribution. The promises remain systematically broken, but subjects who believe salvation remains possible endure conditions that would break those accepting inevitable doom. Family vulnerability provides the ultimate lever. Relatives remain under surveillance, their safety dependent on military performance. Letters arrive with careful timing, reminding subjects that loved ones face consequences for battlefield failures. The threat requires no articulation. Implication maintains constant pressure. These control mechanisms combine into a matrix that transforms terror into tactical doctrine. The biometric data streams flowing from collar networks create real-time psychological profiles, mapping unit cohesion and individual breaking points with mathematical precision. When these enforcement systems meet actual combat conditions, they ensure human resources perform according to specification until elimination becomes complete. The doctrine that governs their expenditure waits just ahead. The control mechanisms that transform terror into compliance find their ultimate expression in tactical doctrines that treat human life as ammunition. When collar telemetry monitors every heartbeat and commissars calibrate fear with mathematical precision, the resulting units become implements for strategies codified in manuals like Field Directive 23 Alpha. Human Resource Expenditure Protocols. The mathematics of murder become military science. Human mind detection eliminates expensive scanning equipment through systematic sacrifice. Red classifications advance across suspected fields in extended lines, while collar telemetry tracks each detonation. Explosive devices reveal positions by eliminating subjects, creating safe corridors mapped in real time through biometric data streams. The 9-count cadence structures movement: rise, advance, kneel, breathe, timing that keeps waves within artillery safety margins, while collar geofencing prevents premature retreat. What began as prayer becomes tactical coordination. Suppression by mass casualty overwhelms enemy fire through calculated consumption. Waves of expendable soldiers charge prepared positions, not for breakthrough, but to exhaust ammunition reserves and force weapon emplacements to declare themselves. Each muzzle flash that kills creates target data for follow-up strikes. Enemy weapons have heat limits and feed cycles. Tactical doctrine calculates when barrels glow and ammunition runs thin, scheduling the next wave to exploit that mathematical moment. Fortress reduction follows similar arithmetic. Expendable battalions assault fortified positions in predetermined phases, each designed to trigger specific defensive responses. First waves test perimeters and reveal kill zones. Second waves probe weak points while drawing concealed fire. Third waves exhaust defender resources. Only then do regular formations advance through corridors carved by calculated sacrifice, following paths lit by collar beacons transmitting from corpses. Tactical sacrifice zones appear on operational maps like terrain features. Units receive deployment to designated areas where their deaths serve strategic diversions. The zones offer no artillery support, no evacuation protocols, no resupply. They exist to generate casualties that enable main assaults elsewhere. Biometric telemetry aggregates into tide charts, predicting unit collapse, scheduling replacements to arrive before cohesion breaks completely. Casualty projections operate like production schedules. Strategic planners calculate required death tolls before operations begin, cross-referencing expenditure tables with replacement timelines. The flow remains continuous. Processing facilities already prepare the next batch as current units march toward elimination. Operation Crimson Tide embodies these doctrines without ornament. The Orc stronghold of Scarfang Ridge awaits systematic reduction through expendable phases 1 through 3, prosecuted by the 23rd Penal Assault Battalion, and similar units. Regular regiments will exploit phases 4 and 5 only after casualty thresholds verify ammunition depletion and morale disruption among defenders. The doctrine is proven. The mathematics are precise. What remains is contact, where theory meets flesh, and expendable warfare reveals its true cost through systematic application of calculated death. Copy contact arrives at 6:42 standard, when the first wave of the 23rd Penal Assault Battalion crests into Scarfang Ridge's kill zones. The Orc stronghold rises like a jagged tooth above ash plains, its slopes bristling with scrap metal fortifications and improvised gun positions. The doctrine that reduced human life to tactical mathematics now meets enemy fire across 3 kilometers of broken ground, mined with calculated precision. Phase 1 begins with a hand signal. Red classifications advance into the minefield at 2-meter intervals, while collar telemetry streams battlefield data to command cogitators in real time. The 9-count cadence learned in processing cues coordinates their movement: rise, advance 9 paces, kneel, breathe, repeat. What sounded like prayer reveals its tactical purpose. Collar geofencing maintains formation spacing, while timing synchronizes with artillery safety margins. The litany was always a battlefield control protocol. Red 47-0923, the broad-shouldered debtor from acquisition, moves through debris fields of rusted vehicles. His collar transmits elevated stress markers, while biometric sensors catalog fear responses with surgical precision. Behind the ridge, Mechanicus adepts monitor data streams, flowing from 2,847 subjects, recording heart rates, cortisol spikes, neural activity patterns. Each measurement feeds algorithmic models, calculating unit cohesion and individual breaking points. The first mine detonates at 6:44, vaporizing Green 231187, the ash belt boy who once asked about Sky. His collar's final transmission provides precise location coordinates that update tactical maps with safe corridor data. The explosion serves dual functions, clearing the path and generating tactical intelligence. His death becomes a data point in optimization matrices designed to improve future conditioning protocols. Orc positions reveal themselves through muzzle flashes that kill systematically. Each defensive emplacement declares its location by eliminating subjects, feeding target coordinates to fire control systems. Heavy slugs from makeshift cannons scythe through ranks, while collar networks record impact trajectories, wound patterns, and survival rates. The hidden purpose emerges. This entire operation functions as a massive data collection exercise, disguised as military assault. Phase 2 launches at 6:51, through corridors mapped by collar telemetry from the dead. Surviving subjects push through suppression fire while biometric sensors monitor stress hormones and pain thresholds. Every fear response, every surge of adrenaline, every agonized breath feeds into databases that will refine future soldier conditioning. The sophisticated monitoring serves not just control, but systematic harvesting of human behavioral data under extreme conditions. Commissar Voldris observes from the command bunker, watching displays that track unit cohesion through aggregated terror metrics. When stress indicators approach breaking thresholds, he authorizes summary executions, collar detonations, that restore compliance while providing additional data on peer psychological responses to witnessed execution. The litany of burden echoes across the battlefield as subjects advance into certain death. 9 counts, pause, rise, 9 counts, pause, kneel. The prayer coordinates tactical movement, while hidden recorders capture audio patterns, vocal stress analysis, and final words for linguistic behavioral studies. Orc defenders exhaust ammunition reserves according to mathematical projections. Slugger barrels overheat after sustained fire, while defensive positions reveal their capabilities through systematic engagement. The fortress reduction doctrine operates exactly as calculated. Defender resources degrade through overwhelming consumption of attacker lives. By 7:15, casualty rates reach 68.4% elimination, within acceptable parameters for Phase 2 completion. Collar telemetry from surviving subjects indicates ammunition depletion among Orc positions, while thermal imaging confirms weapon cooling cycles. Tactical computers calculate optimal timing for Phase 3 exploitation. Regular guard formations advance at 7:23 through corridors carved by calculated sacrifice. The 47th Cadian Regiment follows paths illuminated by collar beacons still transmitting from corpses, exploiting tactical intelligence purchased with expendable lives. The fortress falls with minimal casualties among valuable troops. The operation succeeds through overwhelming sacrifice, but hidden recorders capture everything. The true harvest begins when shooting stops. Biometric data, stress responses, behavioral patterns under extreme duress. What appeared as military assault served dual purpose, tactical objective and systematic data collection for optimizing human resource management. The machinery of analysis awaits. The silence that follows the final orc death screams conceals machinery more sophisticated than any weapon deployed during the assault. While corpse servitors collect bodies according to grid coordinates transmitted by collar beacons, the true harvest begins with methodical precision. Mechanicus adepts move across Scarfang Ridge like crimson insects, their robes ash-stained and oil-flecked, servo arms extending towards the fallen with surgical purpose. Recovery teams work in 9-count intervals, the same cadence that drove the assault, now governing systematic data extraction. Each collar contains memory cores storing biometric recordings captured during the subject's final moments, heart rate fluctuations mapped to terrain coordinates, cortisol cascades aligned with muzzle flash timestamps, neural activity patterns cross-referenced with tactical phases. Red 47-0923's collar, retrieved from debris where orc slugs ended his advance, yields a complete physiological profile of human terror, recorded with scientific precision. Portable sanctums rise beneath shattered gantries as tech priests establish processing stations. Cogitator stacks hum with Binharic litanies, while data spines jack into collar ports, siphoning the harvest of systematic human suffering. The litany of burden appears on waveform displays, its timing analyzed against advanced speeds and unit cohesion metrics. What functioned as prayer reveals its deeper purpose, tactical coordination protocol disguised as religious observance. The Reclamation Directive unfolds in full scope, encompassing not just physical salvage, but experiential data harvested from industrial-scale death. Armor plates are stripped for reissue, while collar memory banks yield the most valuable salvage, behavioral recordings that map human psychological limits with unprecedented precision. Each terror response, each moment of compliance, despite hopeless odds, feeds into optimization matrices labeled experiential optimization. Surviving subjects, 31.6% of original strength, queue inside prefab debriefing halls, where medici servitors patch wounds, while scribes collect testimony under stimulant enhancement. Questions arrive in metronomic sequence. What did you hear before the wall broke? Where did you fix your eyes when the first rank fell? When did the collar vibrate? What prayer did you choose? Individual accounts matter only as data points within aggregated fear maps that will refine future conditioning protocols. The system learns from every broken mind with mechanical precision. Sleep deprivation schedules adjust by minutes to optimize panic responses at critical tactical moments. Shock amplitudes calibrate to suppress flight reflexes without deadening charge velocity. Catechism phrasing changes single verbs to tighten breathing rhythms on the 9th count. The deaths of the 23rd Penal Assault Battalion become research data, their final moments providing crucial insights into human material performance under extreme stress. Command reviews flow upward through channels marked with dual classifications, tactical success and behavioral research completion. The assault achieved fortress reduction with acceptable resource expenditure, but hidden appendices catalogue the true objective: systematic data collection under combat conditions that no laboratory could replicate. What appeared as military operation served dual purpose, generating both tactical victory and invaluable intelligence on human behavioral limits. The machinery of analysis processes terabytes of terror with algorithmic efficiency, but the applications extend far beyond future battlefield deployments. The techniques for maintaining compliance despite hopeless conditions, the psychological manipulation methods refined through systematic observation of fear and death. These revelations await broader implementation across Imperial society. The behavioral data harvested from Scarfang Ridge flows directly into Schola Commissaria archives, where systematic terror transforms from battlefield necessity into academic discipline. Within lecture halls beneath the throne world's surface, cadet commissars study fear like engineers study stress tolerances, learning to calibrate brutality with mathematical precision. The commissariat serves not merely as military police, but as the Imperium's primary research apparatus for optimizing human behavioral control. Instructors project holographic displays showing collar telemetry from Operation Crimson Tide, analyzing terror responses frame by frame. Heart rate spikes mapped to execution. Timing reveal optimal frequency for summary discipline. One execution every 17 hours during standard deployment maintains unit cohesion without triggering complete breakdown. Cortisol cascades measured during collective punishment demonstrate precise dosages that preserve tactical effectiveness while ensuring compliance through systematic fare. Cadets learn despair management as formal doctrine, studying techniques for maintaining just enough hope to prevent mass suicide while never fostering genuine rebellion. Selective mercy becomes calculated intervention, a minor infraction overlooked when biometric data indicates unit morale approaching critical thresholds. These gestures, amplified by pervasive fear, prove more effective than constant brutality. The system understands that false hope extracts more service than absolute despair. Each commissar receives detailed behavioral profiles generated from aggregated operational data. Units sourced from specific populations come with advisories on demographic vulnerabilities, stress responses, and proven control triggers. A commissar assigned to hive-born conscripts learns different catechism phrasings than one managing agri-world levies. Terror becomes personalized, tailored to maximize psychological impact on specific human material. The Academy's advanced curriculum introduces population management protocols that extend battlefield control methods to civilian governance. The same fear calibration techniques that maintain military discipline translate directly to hive administration, labor camp management, and planetary population control. Commissars study crowd psychology like weather patterns, applying graduated terror to maintain optimal compliance levels across entire populations. Training exercises demonstrate practical application through controlled experiments. Cadets practice execution timing on condemned prisoners, while sensors monitor crowd responses, learning to read the precise moment when fear transforms into paralysis. They master the art of strategic clemency, identifying subjects whose unexpected reprieve will generate maximum psychological impact among witnesses. The commissariat functions as a vast behavioral laboratory, where every interaction generates data for system refinement. Field reports catalog human reactions to deprivation, terror, and calculated mercy, feeding back into training protocols that grow more sophisticated with each deployment. Political officers become field researchers, constantly testing and refining techniques for managing human resources under extreme conditions. What began as military necessity reveals broader institutional purpose. The expendable soldier system, serves as testing ground for population control methodologies, later applied across Imperial society. The lessons learned through systematic brutalization of penal battalions find application in every hive block, factory complex, and loyal world where citizens require management through fear. The commissariat's refined techniques for managing despair do not remain confined to military formations. Within weeks of Operation Crimson Tide's completion, civilian application protocols CAP-9 through CAP-13 circulate under wax seals among planetary governors, Arbeits prefects, and senior administratum. The battlefield becomes template. The hive becomes laboratory. What began as military necessity transforms into the foundation of imperial social control. Surveillance technologies tested on expendable battalions migrate seamlessly into civilian infrastructure. The collar telemetry systems that monitored battlefield compliance evolve into mandatory identification implants for hive populations, tracking location data while monitoring stress hormones and loyalty indicators. Biometric scanners at transit checkpoints use algorithms refined through collar data analysis, identifying behavioral patterns that once predicted military breakdown, now applied to detect civilian unrest before it manifests. Conditioning protocols transfer with surgical precision. The 9-count work rhythms that coordinated battlefield advances now regulate factory production lines, timing that maximizes output while preventing organized resistance. Sleep cycles in residential blocks shorten by 16 minutes, the exact duration identified through collar telemetry, as optimal for maintaining compliance without triggering complete breakdown. Air recyclers pump incense compounds used in military conditioning halls, pairing sanctified scents with subconscious impulses toward obedience. Collective punishment scales to neighborhood administration. When Hab Block Gamma 7 defaults on tithe quotas, water pressure drops 30% for the entire stack, restored only after voluntary informant lists reach targeted thresholds. The same geofencing technology that prevented battlefield retreat now draws invisible boundaries through markets and transit nodes. Citizens learn the lesson once taught to penal conscripts. Individual transgression brings collective consequences. The Reclamation Directive extends beyond military assets to encompass comprehensive civilian population management. Every citizen receives biometric cataloging identical to military processing, their behavioral profiles feeding into databases that predict and prevent resistance before it develops. The systematic dehumanization, perfected on expendable soldiers, normalizes similar treatment for any population classified as problematic. Omega Protocol subjects emerge in new roles across Imperial society. Those mysterious black classifications, subjected to specialized conditioning, beyond standard documentation, now staff internal security forces with mechanical precision. Their extreme psychological modification makes them ideal for civilian population control. Expendable assets capable of deploying against their own species without hesitation or moral consideration. They appear in convoys at dusk, shaved heads and blank expressions, serving as visible reminders of institutional power. Test sectors implement full-scale behavioral experiments using techniques refined through military brutalization. Designated residential blocks become controlled environments, where administrators measure citizen responses to systematic deprivation, fear escalation, and strategic mercy. Panic responses are catalogued, compliance thresholds are mapped, breaking points are documented with the same precision once applied to military conditioning. The expendable soldier system reveals its ultimate purpose, not merely military recruitment, but continuous research into total population control. Every processing facility, every conditioning regimen, every combat deployment serves as data collection for civilian governance methodologies. The visible brutality of penal battalions creates demonstration effects that maintain compliance across entire populations through calculated terror. The laboratory of despair operates continuously, its findings shaping billions of lives through systematic application of fear. The civilian applications refined through systematic brutalization operate most effectively through calculated visibility rather than hidden oppression. The expendable soldier system functions as perpetual demonstration, its brutality exposed just enough to instruct while concealing sufficient mechanism to preserve institutional legitimacy. Citizens who glimpse processing queues, who hear whispered accounts of collar executions, who see transport convoys carrying the condemned, these witnesses become unwitting participants in their own subjugation through anticipatory terror. Propaganda picts broadcast carefully curated footage of penal battalions marching to deployment, faces blurred, but numbers vast. Accompanying narration speaks of redemption through service while omitting acquisition methods, conditioning protocols, and systematic expenditure rates. The partial transparency creates space for imagination to amplify fear beyond actual brutality. Citizens understand consequences without comprehending mechanisms, generating self-regulating terror that reduces enforcement costs. Families of expendable soldiers become demonstration subjects for population control methodology. Their surveillance and occasional punishment reinforce the system's reach, while providing behavioral research data on civilian responses to institutional pressure. A debtor's wife receiving reduced rations after her husband's battlefield death demonstrates consequences to entire residential blocks. Her visible suffering teaches compliance more effectively than direct threats, creating ripple effects that extend far beyond immediate victims. Omega Protocol subjects emerge in civilian roles with deliberate visibility. Their presence at public gatherings, blank expressions during crowd control, mechanical responses to commands, all serve as living reminders of institutional power to reshape human nature itself. Citizens witness what specialized conditioning can accomplish and adjust behavior accordingly. These remade humans, who feel no pain and show no mercy, demonstrate that resistance meets overwhelming, inhuman force. Administrative transparency follows similar calculations. Processing quotas appear on public boards, alongside tithe requirements and production targets, normalizing systematic brutalization as routine governance. Citizens learn to calculate their own vulnerability through published metrics, arrest rates, debt thresholds, demographic targeting patterns. The mathematics of expendability become public knowledge, creating self-regulating fear. The pyramid of fear operates through visible hierarchies, where each level maintains compliance by observing the suffering of those below. Loyal citizens fear becoming debtors, debtors fear becoming criminals, criminals fear becoming expendable soldiers, expendable soldiers fear reclassification to specialized conditioning. Each group polices itself through terror of demotion. Strategic mercy amplifies terror through contrast. When processing quotas run low, pardons are granted with public ceremony emphasizing institutional benevolence, while reminding witnesses of their vulnerability. The condemned who receive reprieve become grateful advocates for the system that nearly destroyed them. Hope is rationed like water, dispensed in measured doses that maintain compliance without fostering genuine security. The visible machinery of expendability creates compliance through anticipatory terror. Citizens modify behavior not because they face immediate threat, but because they understand the system's capacity for systematic brutalization. The demonstration effect operates continuously, maintaining order through calculated displays of institutional power that transform human beings into expendable resources. The demonstration's effects that terrorize civilian populations through calculated visibility serve a purpose far more sophisticated than simple intimidation. In classified exchanges between Munitorum strategists and Administratum governors, Operation Crimson Tide receives analysis not for Scarfang Ridge's tactical value, but for the clarity of its behavioral telemetry. The key metric in sealed reports is not battlefield success, but civilian application. The expendable soldier system exists not primarily to win wars, but to provide the fundamental architecture of imperial population control, a vast apparatus that transforms systematic brutalization into the grammar of governance itself. The Omega Protocol subjects, whose specialized conditioning remained shrouded in mechanicus secrecy, emerge from their chambers to fulfill their ultimate purpose as internal pacification cohorts deployed against civilian populations. Their extreme psychological modification renders them ideal instruments for suppressing unrest with maximum psychological impact. When bread riots threaten hive stability, or factory strikes challenge production quotas, these remade humans respond with mechanical precision, their blank expressions and inhuman endurance serving as living demonstrations of institutional power to reshape human nature itself. Citizens witnessing Omega deployment understand that resistance meets overwhelming force guided by former humans who feel no pain, show no mercy, and accept no surrender. The biometric data harvested from collar networks during military operations feeds directly into civilian surveillance apparatus that monitors entire populations through mandatory identification implants. The 9-second ping intervals that once transmitted battlefield terror now track every Imperial citizen, cataloging behavioral patterns through the same algorithms that optimized military conditioning protocols. Fear responses recorded during systematic slaughter inform crowd control techniques applied in hive blocks. Compliance thresholds mapped through collar telemetry determine patrol densities and ration distributions. The Reclamation Directive encompasses not just physical salvage, but the systematic harvesting of human behavioral data, transforming suffering into raw material for social optimization. The promise of redemption through service reveals itself as the most cynical deception in the imperial lexicon, serving dual purposes with calculated precision. For the condemned, it motivates compliance during processing and deployment by offering theoretical salvation through exceptional service. For civilian populations, it maintains the crucial illusion that cooperation offers protection. If even criminals and debtors can earn absolution through military service, surely loyal citizens remain safe from systematic brutalization. Hope becomes another rationed resource, dispensed in measured doses that prevent total despair without fostering genuine security. Strategic transparency operates through calculated revelation that allows citizens to understand enough about processing quotas, conditioning methods, and expenditure rates to regulate their own behavior, while remaining ignorant of deeper mechanisms. The partial knowledge creates space for imagination to amplify actual brutality, generating self-regulating terror that reduces enforcement costs while maintaining compliance through anticipatory fear. Every processing queue, transport convoy, and casualty report reinforces the core message. Every Imperial citizen exists at institutional pleasure, subject to systematic expenditure for purposes beyond their comprehension. The expendable soldier apparatus has become essential not just for military operations, but for maintaining the fundamental structure of Imperial society through calculated terror. The visible brutality, systematic dehumanization, and mathematical waste serve as perpetual demonstration to 10,000 worlds that resistance brings consequences beyond individual destruction. The machinery of expendability operates as the foundation stone of Imperial governance, where human suffering becomes optimization data and systematic murder transforms into religious ritual. Citizens learn the lesson through observation. In the Imperium, compliance is survival, and survival depends on remaining useful to institutions that treat human life as renewable resource. The reframing is complete. What appeared as military necessity reveals itself as comprehensive population control methodology. The slave-soldier system exists to domesticate a civilization through systematic application of terror, ensuring that every Imperial citizen understands their expendability while maintaining just enough hope to prevent total collapse. The queues that formed at dawn, the litanies that kept time, the collars that monitored fear, all serve the ultimate purpose of transforming an empire's population into willing participants in their own subjugation. The architecture of expendability achieves its most terrifying form through self-perpetuation, creating an eternal engine that generates the very problems it claims to solve. After Scarfang Ridge, sealed reports circulate back to processing centers across 10,000 worlds. Expenditure tables receive revision, collar firmware updates synchronize 9-second ping intervals with refined litany phrasing. Civilian application protocols add clauses for ration modulation based on aggregated fear indices. The pipeline refills automatically. The machine solves problems by creating them. Expendable soldier quotas require continuous population pressure to maintain adequate supply streams. When hive productivity improves and desperation decreases, tithe burdens automatically increase to restore optimal stress levels. When crime rates drop below processing thresholds, Arbeit's enforcement patterns shift to generate adequate arrest quotas. Unrest rises beneath systematic pressure, summoning internal pacification cohorts whose blank-faced deployment confirms the lesson the unrest was designed to teach. Each correction generates the next deficiency. Each deficiency justifies the next correction. The apparatus has grown beyond institutional control, becoming essential infrastructure that cannot be dismantled without threatening Imperial power structures. Planetary governors who attempt quota reductions face munitorum sanctions that cripple their worlds. Administratum officials who question processing protocols receive frontier assignments, where life expectancy measures in months. The system protects itself through systematic elimination of internal dissent, ensuring immortality through calculated terror. Technological advancement serves only optimization rather than elimination. Collar telemetry grows more sophisticated, biometric analysis more precise, conditioning protocols more efficient. Each innovation increases throughput while reducing operational costs. The machinery strengthens through systematic refinement, becoming more essential as it becomes more effective. Citizens finance their own slaughterhouses through taxes, while singing hymns of imperial devotion. The litany of burden transforms systematic murder into administrative routine. What once required justification now operates through bureaucratic inertia. 9 counts, pause, rise, 9 counts, pause, kneel. The prayer that regulated battlefield terror now synchronizes industrial-scale brutalization with religious precision. Processing continues because it has always continued, because stopping would require confronting the magnitude of institutional crime. Dawn returns to Tertius Hive. Oil rain drizzles through condensation-streaked air, while servo skulls drift along the penitent's queue, ink needles clicking against damp flesh. The same faces appear: debtors with chalked tallies, hive scrappers with lapsed permits, farm hands who chose wrong patron saints. But now the deeper architecture reveals itself. These queues exist not despite imperial prosperity, but because of it, feeding machinery that requires perpetual crisis to function. The gates breathe open, the column steps forward, prayer keeps cadence, paperwork keeps score. The eternal engine turns, consuming human material with mechanical precision, while 10,000 worlds learn that survival depends on remaining useful to institutions that treat life as renewable resource.